Hello Stampers, this is Yana Smakula for My Favorite Things. Welcome back for another video tutorial. In this video, I'm creating a card for my favorite person using the MFT Cattitude stamp set. I love the wordplay in this set. I wanted to create a background filled with playful cats. I'm a cat person, as you can probably tell. So I started by stamping the cat images onto white cardstock using my mini Misty. I basically stamped 3 out of the 4 kitty images. I skipped the one with the toilet paper roll, so I'll save that cat image for another card. And I just stamped the other 3. I stamped them each 3 times, so I ended up with 9 images in total, which was just enough for the card idea I had in mind. I used alcohol marker-friendly ink and stamped images onto Nina Solar white cardstock. I also stamped several balls of yarn to use as a little filler element for my kitty background. Next, I used coordinating dies and cut the images out in my die cutting machine. Alternatively, you can create a 1-layer card by doing only stamping and skip any die cutting. If you prefer, you can stamp the pattern directly onto your card base and just build the pattern as you stamp it. You can then also color the background any color you want so that it's not white. Next, I used my Copic markers and added a touch of color to each of my kitties. So the idea for this card was to keep the cat coloring to a minimum, instead bring the color in using a colored background and by adding color to the yarn. I used a C9 Copic marker to color the cat's nose, ears, and the tail black. I did not do any shading and kept the cats all white. I also used the R20 marker to color their tongues pink. I decided I wanted to add some spot coloring as well, so I colored an area around the eye black, and I did color over the eye, and that made the eye disappear, but I was planning to draw it back in using a white pen. Now, you can add more spots to your kitties. You can also use a different color marker, maybe orange or brown or peach, whatever you want. I wanted my coloring to be very easy and very doable, especially for a beginner. I remember when I was starting to make cards, I found the critter coloring to be very intimidating. I did not know how to color fur. And I saw all of these beautiful colored images online, and I felt a little intimidated because in my head, I thought that I could never replicate that. So in this video, I wanted to show you the absolutely simple, the easiest way to color an animal and still make it look pretty. So we have barely any coloring here, yet these kitties still look adorable and fun. I also colored yarn, and for that I used just a single YG03 marker. So all of the yarn was colored green. The color scheme I had planned for this card was blue, green, and white with touches of black. I used a panel of light blue cardstock for the background for my card, so I wanted to have the cats sit on a colorful background, and using colored cardstock is the easiest way to do that. I used the sentiment stamp from this set, I cut it apart, and I arranged it to be a 2-line message, and I stamped it in the center of my panel, slightly toward the top. The 1-line sentiment didn't really work for me, so that's why I cut my sentiment or my stamp apart to create a 2-line message. I can easily put it back and use it again in the future as a 1-line sentiment. With that done, I sorted my colored and die-cut elements and I started building my background. Now, this is one of my favorite things to do. It is like putting a puzzle together. I have already added a foam adhesive square to the back of each of these elements. So they are first a little bit easier to handle, as that makes it easier to pick them up from my desk. And second, they end up popped up on the card and they cast a little shadow on the background, adding interest to it. I love to add dimension to my projects, and whenever I add a die cut or a colored element onto a background, I typically always use foam adhesive to pop it up. I ended up stamping a few additional balls of yarn to fill some of the gaps and balance the green color a bit better on the background. Next, I used long blade scissors and I trimmed the excess images off to contain my pattern within the background. I had some of the images go outside the pattern and I had to cut them off. At this point, I added additional yarn, and then I used the C3 Copic marker and I added shading under each element. Now, the shading is actually barely visible, but it does add a little bit of interest to the card. Finally, I used a white pen and drew the eyes back in over the black colored spots. So we have one black eye and one white eye on each of the kitties. So that finishes my card for today. If you make a card inspired by this video, we'd love it if you shared your project online and tagged us on social media. We always enjoy seeing what you make. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.